Russellianism, these days in this kind of discussion, the main thesis seems to be the abstractness of physics. All we learn from physics is about the structure, the relations, and the dispositions of physical entities and particles and so forth. And in particular, we learn nothing about the intrinsic character. So that's a big claim. And defending it is maybe not so easy, but this is what's out there and popular. So this doesn't entail anything, but I think it suggests powerfully to a lot of thinkers two things. The one is that we have this problem about conscious experience. You have exhausted all the possibilities. You don't find a home for experience in the world. If physics only gives us structure and no intrinsic qualities, maybe the properties of experience can find a home, so to speak, as the intrinsic properties of physical states. That's one hope. And the other thing is that physics seems to need some intrinsic, some categorical properties to stand up. Otherwise, it's all dispositions, all relations without relata, and the thing will just collapse in itself. So we sort of save physics, and we find a home for conscious experience, and everything is excellent. Two ways this has been sort of this agenda has been advanced is panpsychism and pan-proto-psychism. Both of them come in many versions, of course. The panpsychist is radical. The thought is that the microparticles literally have experiences. Like you got experiences, the particles that make you up also have experiences. So there's sort of somebody home. Interesting question, what these experiences would be like also, but the idea is that there's tons of subjects out there. For every microparticle one, it has experiences. They have, this is David Chalmers' lingo, phenomenal properties. And phenomenal properties involve an awareness of qualitative properties. So an awareness by what? A subject. So there's somebody home who is aware of a property. So that's the panpsychist idea. A somewhat different version of exploiting this framework is the pan-proto-psychist approach, also much explored by David. Here we back off from saying that the little guys actually have experiences, have phenomenal properties. We say they are proto-conscious properties, proto-phenomenal properties, and there's a big question as to how to fill that out. It's the sort of thing that can give rise to experience somehow. And I've put down another bullet here. This is the idea of the constitution. You can go different ways on that, but if you go with the micro idea, right, that the microparticles have micro experience, or micro, pan, proto, whatever, these small properties constitute the large experiential properties that you are aware of. So there's a constitution idea there. All right. Now finally, the panqualityist idea. It's a version, David argues, of pan-proto-psychism. We have no phenomenal properties, but simply qualities. So there's no awareness there. There's no need for a subject. There are qualities out there that in some sense ground, anchor the dispositional properties that physics tells us about. So these properties are not experienced, but exemplified or instantiated. The qualities are micro versions of the sensory qualities we experience. That's what's specific. So we get quite a bit of information about what the micro properties are. These qualities are the kinds of qualities that you know about in your experience right now. Whether they are exactly kind of the same size, also that remains to be determined. But they are basically the same kind of thing. So it's not. Many people get nervous with proto this and proto that because basically we don't know what we're talking about. Right? Here the thought is, yeah, you do. It's the qualities, it's red and green and blue, that sort of thing. And then a very interesting claim that resonates with me or catches my attention. David argues this is the view that the neutral monists Mach, James, and Russell held. And I like Russell. So I'll explore whether Russell's way of doing that sort of thing might help. First, the strengths. Why is this view at all attractive? Right? Successfully addresses some versions of the combination problem. We have heard about the combination problem. So, no gap between the little subjects and the big subjects. That's a big one. Right? If you're a proper panpsychist, you have all these little men. In every electron, there's one. And they have to add up to you. And it's kind of mysterious. We don't have that. There's just instantiated qualities. No subjects that are aware of them. There's just you. No gap between the non-qualitative and the qualitative. It's qualitative all the way down. No unbridgeable gap between the micro and the macro. Hopefully, it needs to be shown how that would be done. But it seems less hopeless than on some other models. And then a deflationary account of the subject may help to close the gap between the macro subject, you, and its non-subjective constituents. So here we are already sort of on thin ice. And the big question, what sort of thing you are, right, and how you get a thing like you are out of a bunch of particles that have qualities instantiated in them. So, now, actually there are many weaknesses listed in David's paper. The main weakness is this. It's called the quality awareness gap. Here's a little quote. No instantiations of qualities ever necessitate awareness of qualities. And the problem, of course, is that phenomenal qualities involve awareness of qualities. So the result is that you can get a pan-qualitative zombie. So the thought is that this view may be right, and every single micro-constituent of you is filled to the brim with lovely qualities, and then nothing happens. Nothing. It's like nothing to be. You have no point of view. There's no perspective, nothing. It's all full of qualities, great, but how do you add those up in such a way that you instantiate a single phenomenal property, that something becomes like something for you? It's a conceivability argument. It's done much more nicely in David's paper. So now to Russell. Russell had exactly, I think, you can judge for yourself, at least a very similar type of worry when he first looked at what the neutral monists at the time were up to. So I've given you a nice long quote, and I'll read it to you. So the early Russell and David now are of one mind on this matter, I think. So here's what he says. What I demand from neutral monism is an account of that principle of selection which, to a given person, at a given moment, makes one object, one subject, and one time intimate and near and immediate, as no other object or subject or time can be to that subject at that time. And now it gets better. In a world where there were no specially mental facts, is it not plain that there would be a complete impartiality, an evenly diffused light, not the central illumination fading away into outer darkness, which is characteristic of the objects in relation to a mind? It may be that some answer can be found to these queries without admitting specifically mental facts, but to me it seems obvious that this would be impossible without the selectiveness of mind. So, at the time, he's a sense data philosopher with the relation of acquaintance. And even if you don't have acquaintance in the game, there's just sort of this evenly diffused light of qualities out there. No perspective, no point of view, nothing's like anything for you. It's no good. And this is how neutral monism dies. So I think what David and the early Russell share is a relational model of perceptual consciousness with the central ingredient of acquaintance or awareness. We have a subject, an act, and an object, and the act is this acquaintance relation, or some sort of an awareness relation. And this is how experience gets going. Right? Being acquainted with or aware of a quality makes it be like something to be that subject, for the subject, right? Phenomenal quality sets in at that point. This is what it is for the subject to have a phenomenal property, and without this relation there can be no what it's like in the world. Without it, nothing is like anything for anybody. So up to this point, it seems to me there's a very fine agreement between David now and Russell back then, before 1919. Then Russell changes his mind rather drastically. He wanted to be a neutral monist really badly for ontological reasons. He says so. He made great endeavors to believe the doctrine. So maybe all you get here is wishful thinking. It's a possibility. So what he discovered is the king of acquaintance. What he discovered upon reflection in 1919 is that there is no self, no such thing that can shoot out acquaintance arrows or anything. And that the act of acquaintance is undiscoverable. He used to be acquainted with acquaintance, just I believe David is acquainted with acquaintance these days. And Russell, it is hard to explain. All of a sudden, all that evaporated. The self evaporated and the acquaintance relation. And he just thought it's empirically not given. We are not entitled to it. So of your structure, self, act, object, all that remains is the patch of color, a red patch. The self's gone, the act's gone, the red patch remains. Notice the red patch is no micro thing. There's no micro, it's the kind of red patch that you can see when you look at the tomato. So, quote, accordingly, the sensation that we have when we see a patch of color simply is that patch of color. The sensation you have simply is that patch of color. That's all there is. Nothing else is in the picture anymore. We must say that the patch of color and our sensation in seeing it are identical. This is from the analysis of mind. So this is the new view. But of course you want to know, okay, who sees that patch and how do they manage? Well, I mean, all the machinery is gone, the self's gone, the act's gone, it's just rubber left. So how is it going to go? So this slide I shall skip, I just put it in. If you search the text, the relevant text in Russell, you will find chapters on subjectivity. They don't yield much. We can go back to that, but I think they don't give us many answers that we are looking for here. What does the work, I think, is his embrace of the bundle theory. So he says it is supposed that thoughts cannot just come and go, but need a person to think them, a self. But I think that the person is not an ingredient in the single thought. He is rather constituted by relations of the thoughts to each other and the body. So I think this is an expression of the bundle theory. So, yeah, okay, great. So how's that going to help? Right? So who sees the patch and how do they do it? So first pass, right? The whole interrelated bundle of thoughts, and thoughts for Russell is like in Descartes, everything mental, very broad. So the whole bundle of thoughts constitutes the seeing subject. That's the bundle idea. And to see the colored patch is for it to be appropriately related to the other elements that constitute you. Okay, so it'll all depend on what all these relations are, I suppose. So what do we have? The relata and the relations. Right? So the relata are in the first place thoughts, all types of mental states. In the Russell world, this turns out that this boils down to sensation and images. All thoughts are made of sensations and images. And we just have heard about sensations. Sensations are patches of red and blue and green and so forth. So it's a very sparse world. We've still got 10 minutes, I'm afraid. Okay, relations. Right? The ones that Russell sort of is fond of, the relations between these elements that are in your bundle is memory, association, habit formation, ability to produce images, the dependence on past experience, and what he calls knowledge reactions. The ability to report, for instance. And he says these relations constitute the unity of one experience and transform mere occurrences into experiences. They are what transforms a set of particulars into a life. It is they that give the continuity of a person or a mind. Okay. So what are the official answers that we find in Russell? Right? Seeing a tomato is like something for you because there's the red patch. The red patch is appropriately related by all these relations listed on the previous page to the various other particulars that are part of your mind, that constitute your mind. And that is what it is to instantiate a phenomenal property. Now, this is, you are aware of that red patch. He wants that. And he thinks this is how you rise up from just a sea of qualities to something that's a real phenomenal property, an experience. And you know what it is like for you to see a tomato. The red patch needs to trigger a knowledge reaction of some sort. And that is what it is to have the more intimate qualitative knowledge which we possess concerning our mental states. That's the knowledge of what things look like to people who can see. This is the plan here. Okay, so have we made any progress, right? The first issue with panqualityism was, number one here, is it conceivable that it isn't like anything to be a system of micro-particles that instantiate the appropriate micro-qualities? David answers, yes, that is the quality awareness gap. Second question, is it conceivable that it isn't like anything to be a subject related by the awareness relation to the right kind of quality? And here you're supposed to say, no, that's not possible. If you have acquaintance with, awareness of the red patch, it gets to be like something for you to see that red patch. Now, third question pertaining to the Russell stuff. Is it conceivable that it isn't like anything to be a bundle of appropriately related particulars, color patches, etc.? I think maybe David and maybe many of you will say, yeah, sure, that's conceivable. It's the same problem we had in number one above. You might try a different answer. You might say, no, that's not conceivable. Because for a red patch to stand in these special relations to the other elements in the bundle just is to be aware of that quality. Just is to have a phenomenal quality. Just is for it to be like something for the subject who is that bundle. Okay. So what do we do now? So we have two models here. On the left side, we have the simple model, the self, the acquaintance arrow, the quality, and on the right side, we have a big mess. The little splotches here are Russell's color patches. This ties into his big neutral monist picture of how the world works. That's what it's made of. And then you see a dotted line, a round line, that's you. That's the self that is carved out by these very faint arrows. Right? These are memory and influence of earlier experience and knowledge reactions and so forth. And you see the little circled red patch. Right? It's appropriately related to the other elements that form you, and that's what makes you have experience. So now I just leave you with a question and then I'm finished. Right? So if you think there's an asymmetry, why do you think, I mean, probably you think the left side is good, the right side's bad. What is it about the arrow that explains how the quality at its tip gets to determine what it's like to be the subject at its origin? It can't be that we just call it the awareness relation. You can call anything, anything. Is it that the arrow simply is a placeholder for whatever it is that achieves this miracle? Well, something's doing it, obviously, since we do have experience, but it's not a very substantive answer. So maybe it's the red thing, or do we have a deep insight into the nature of this relation, into this arrow relation? Maybe because we are acquainted with acquaintance. Maybe we really know the essence of this arrow, and we just see that it can pull off this feat. So question, can the friend of the bundle view make a parallel claim? Could Russell say, one can just see that the red patch related just so to the other elements of the bundle self lets the self have a red experience. Just, basically slamming down your hand and saying, it's obvious to me. On reflection, when I see this setup, I just see it's going to work. And I can't conceive of this bundle so related without phenomenal property. So I ask, is it obvious that the bundle answer is less satisfactory? What do we know about the arrow that we don't know about the group of arrows in the bundle model? Is there a significant asymmetry? And this is the question with which